welcome back to Vertical Thoughts. We're still working on our intro. This is the climbing podcast by climbers and for climbers. I got some climbers in here, dude. Guys, we'll start with Nick. I got my friend Nick Henson and also my boy Zach Medina, one of the many Zachs involved in my life. Start with Nick. Nick, give yourself a quick introduction. How long you been climbing, how you know me, etc., etc.
Hi, I'm Nick. I've been climbing for 7 years on and off, mostly off. And I met Liam through Vital.
Yeah, and Vital's our local climbing gym. I started climbing there, and very shortly after, Nick was one of the very first people that I met and started climbing with. And Zach, it sounds like it's your turn, buddy. Bring it in.
Yeah, I've been climbing for probably about a year and a half now, probably. About that time, yeah. And I met you through Vital, through the many people that I'm now friends with in the group.
Yeah, so I'll be honest, Zach, I didn't know you'd only been climbing for a year and a half. Congratulations on your progress and how you're doing. You're doing great. Keep it up.
Appreciate that.
So what we've heard so far kind of speaks to the community that we have at our local climbing gym. And a lot of us know each other through climbing. I mean, a lot of us also, not us, I shouldn't say, because I'm not involved in this group, but a lot of people that climb at the climbing gym have known each other for longer, back to school, high school, middle school, even as far back as elementary school maybe. But a lot of people meet through climbing. And so kind of the first thing I wanted to talk about is I wanted to get your guys' opinions on climbing as a community versus climbing as a sport. We talked about this a little bit in the last episode with Mark, and he talked about how it is turning into more of a sport and less of a community or a lifestyle as opposed to how it was maybe 5 years ago. This may be hard to think about or hard to consider fully because, like Zach, you've only been climbing for a year and a half, but I wouldn't say the community's changed too much in the last just year alone. But even in our home gym, we're seeing more non-climbers that are there regularly climbing. And I personally think it's a good thing. I think it's cool to see I'm doing air quotes right now, but you can't see, rock climbers in a rock climbing gym climbing. And they're there all the time. You know what I mean? They're becoming rock climbers, but not in the same sense about how rock climbers have been for the last 5 or 10 years. The actual rock climber is changing. And so what are your guys' thoughts on that? The community versus the sport and how it's affected you and how it's been changing?
Being only like a part of it for about a year or so, I've seen it as a very, very open community, really. Even by just coming in there I started out just out of nowhere, really. But coming in and just talking to people, I mean, it's really open. Everybody's super friendly. I can't really say much on more of that, to be honest.
So your experience has been positive, it sounds like, for the most part.
Very, very positive, yeah. I don't think I've ever had really a bad rep with anything or anybody, really, for that matter. Everybody's pretty friendly.
That's good. Nick, what do you think?
I mean, like, with climbing as a sport, I've noticed, like, some people have kind of like an elitist kind of mentality, And, like, seeing non-rock climbing climbers, if that makes sense. Seeing, like, non-normal climbers like climb, I see it as a good thing because like then you have like more exposure to your sport and then more people will like find out who you are and see that you're actually good and they'll want to like follow you and like see the kind of shit that you do.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Answers the question.
Yeah, the exposure is good. I would also agree that it's a good thing that we're having climbing become kind of streamlined to more of a mainstream audience. And kind of like what you said, Nick, we're seeing non-climbing climbers at the gym. And what we mean by that, if you're listening to this, if you are a climber, or you're not a climber, you're going to relate to one or two of these things. But a non-rock climbing climber essentially is the person who is not involved in the lifestyle of rock climbing. And you can tell, and Mark kind of talked about this, you can tell just by talking to that person whether or not they're involved in the lifestyle of climbing. I mean, we're talking people who, they come to the gym maybe as much as 3 or 4 times a week. They climb their ass off, you know what I mean? They have a ton of fun. They push themselves really hard. They get stronger over time. They're doing the same things that climbers are doing, but they're totally disparate from the community. They're detached. In other words, they don't know pro climbers. They don't know really anything about outdoor climbing. They maybe have gone once or twice with their friends. And none of these things that I'm saying are negatives. I'm not I'm not trying to hate on anyone like this. I'm just saying it's a different kind of rock climber. And then you have people who are a lot more involved in the thick of it in the community. You know what I mean? In rock climbing, we know a little bit about the sport's history. Maybe we know some pro climbers who are more involved in the climbing community and what it is. Maybe there's some kind of an online presence or a media presence. Instagram right now is very popular for rock climbing. You can find a lot of awesome rock climbing social media, specifically on Instagram, videos, photos, that kind of thing. And then there are people who frequent the climbing gym, but you'll never find them watching climbing, getting involved in rock climbing. You can't really talk climbing with that person. Two totally different schools of thought. And I want to clarify that I think both are great. Both are totally fine. If you're a climber, if you're at the gym to be a climber and that's your lifestyle, I appreciate, understand, and accept that, right? That's me. I belong to that group. However, I think there's a very positive side to people coming into a climbing gym who are not traditional climbers, who don't maybe have too much knowledge of the sport or are not involved in it. Because here's the thing. What's our demographic? You know what I mean? If we're trying to grow the community, who are we going to target? Are we going to target people who have never been to a rock climbing gym? Or are we going to target people who come frequently to a rock climbing gym but are not yet part of the climbing community? I think it's very easy to take the leap and the step into the rock climbing community and start to understand, like we talked about last episode, climbing ethics and be taught, be coached. And I think that's the problem we run into. A lot of these people that don't obey climbing ethics have never been explained to what climbing ethics are. It's a new generation of climber who just treat it as a sport. So any thoughts on that? Anything that you guys have experienced personally as opposed to climbing being made into a sport as opposed to a lifestyle or a community?
Yeah, I get what you're talking about. It's more of like the people that come in like every once in a while, or like you said, 3 to 4 times a week, but don't really have a lifestyle to it. It's more of just more of a hobby, I would say, if anything, to them. But that's totally fine, because I mean, climbing in general, I think gets you out of your comfort zone perfectly fine and gets you to travel a little bit more. I feel like even if you're not into the full lifestyle, you obviously every once in a while you will be asked to go on trips from other climbers, and sometimes you will go. I do have a friend that I've taken climbing to Vital, actually, specifically. She's only been climbing a few times or so, but she says she loves it, and she's gone, and she knows how to belay, and I don't even know how to belay yet, and I've been climbing for about a year, and she's been climbing only a few times. I mean, it just turns into a hobby, but I mean, it turns into a very lovable hobby, I think so.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that goes back to, like I said, like targeting our demographic is we have to stay away from, I think what Nick was talking about, stay away from the elitist climber idea.
Yeah.
We can't be those people, because here's the thing, those people exist already, and there doesn't need to be more elitist climbers out there who are like wanting to close down the walls, and shut the gates and just being like, we got enough climbers. We don't need any more. I don't need all these meatheads coming in pretending to be strong in my climbing gym. In a certain way, I relate to that, but at the same time, who cares? It's we're building the community, we're bringing viewership and larger numbers to a sport that's been so underexposed for the last, almost like the last decade. I say the sport has just experienced an extreme lack of exposure, considering how fun it is to watch, in my opinion. Just climbing media recently has skyrocketed. Do you guys, how much and how frequently do you guys consume climbing media?
Personally, I actually don't follow like any climbing at all. I don't know. I've always kind of been this way with like the kind of stuff that I've been interested in. Like even with surfing, I never really followed anybody or like watched any. Well, actually, that's kind of a lie. I don't know. I just, for some reason with climbing, like I haven't really gotten into climbing media.
Okay, so maybe climbing's more personal to you. Maybe it has more of.
Yeah, I'd rather do it than watch it. If that makes sense.
Okay.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, I get that. I follow like a decent. I mean, I follow like the normal amount. I follow people like Conrad Anker and Honold and Caldwell, Jorgensen. I mean, mainly like the top people in like the sport right now, pretty much. But other than that, I don't really follow. I don't think much of it.
Okay, yeah, and we live in an interesting time. Mark and I talked about this a little bit in the last podcast, where you can find videos throughout Instagram. Just look up the topic, hashtag rock climbing. You will find dozens and dozens of videos of people putting down extremely difficult climbs outdoors. We live in a very strange age for climbing media. And it's weird because 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you climb double digits outdoors, you are semi-pro. You're a big deal. You're known in your community. You're known at the local crags. You're a beast. Nowadays, everyone and their cousins climbing double digits outdoors, it seems like. And I'm not demeaning climbing double digits outdoors, because here's the thing. The climbs have not gotten easier. The climbs will always be the same. The grades, they're subjective, but they're going to stay the same. The difficulty of a climb does not change. From person to person, maybe it does. Maybe a climb is easier for one person than the other, but the objective difficulty of a rock climb stays the same, unless, of course, the climb physically changes. It's altered, or a hold breaks or something like that. But it's just the general average climbers getting stronger. And even, Zach, even in the last year and a half that you've been climbing, you must have noticed the average climber at our gym just climbs harder. Like, the average climber used to be, in our gym we do color grading. We do, colored dots basically to symbolize grade, V0 to V1, and then V1 to V2. I think it's actually V0 to V1, and then it's V2 to V3, et cetera, et cetera. But the average climber, it seemed like, was climbing what is an orange dot, which is, I believe, V2 to V3 in our gym. And it's changed. It seems like everyone's pushing the V6 range now.
That's one thing I've really noticed. Like, it used to be like everyone was kind of plateaued at like the 2-3 to 4-5 spot. Like, everyone could do a couple reds, but like they couldn't really like touch the purples yet. But then now, like, it's kind of crazy because everyone now, it seems like, including like most people that like I consider to be not as good as me, which is kind of a fucked up way to think of it, but like they're all like about the same level as me, like pushing purples and like even like thinking about blacks now. It's kind of crazy.
Even like, I agree. Even seeing people come in, I mean, I've seen just people come in like once or twice and they're already on oranges, or they're trying to red. I have another friend actually that I met through Vital, another Zach, of course. He finally got his first purple, I believe it was about a week ago or so, and he's only been climbing for a couple months, as far as I know. And he's already pushing purples. Like, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so for those of you not involved in a color grading system, I know there are actually gyms that use the same exact system as we do, but a red is going to be a V4 to V5. A purple is going to be a V6 to V7, and then a black is V8 to V9. Technically, there's another sticker for 10 plus, but we don't set 10 plus in our gym. But basically, the reason they do that is because one climb will be a V4 for one person, maybe a V5 for another person, essentially, I think is the concept behind it. And this kind of ties into what I want to talk about next and get your guys' opinions on. Grading. So grading is, by definition, a little bit arbitrary. And it's very important to the sport. There are a lot of number chasers out there, people who just want to push their grade. You know what I mean? They want to talk about how hard they climb in numbers. And I get it, dude. I really do get it. You want to say, I just got my first V9, I just got my first V7, I just got my first V4 even. It's a personal victory. It's a landmark for yourself, and it's a great way to measure your own progress in rock climbing. Do you guys think grading is, in essence, arbitrary? Do you think it has meaning behind it?
Not really, because I mean, like, you can do a climb, but then look terrible doing it. Like, if you're just scrambling up the wall and like just like you're just completely struggling throughout that climb. Like, me personally, like, my style of climbing is like I like to do static movement. Like, I like to make the climb try to look easy, but then like whenever you see someone on that same exact climb like fumbling everywhere, like cutting feet and just belly flopping on the wall, then it's just like, are they really doing it well?
Yeah, is that really climbing? Is that if you're not using any technique, are you participating in the sport? That's not a question for me to answer, but that is a good question.
Yeah, I gotta agree with Nick on that one completely. I try to also stay static. I know I do also sometimes flail a lot, to be honest. I'm not gonna deny that at all. But yeah, I agree completely.
That also kind of like goes back to that elitist mentality, though. Like you kind of need to like stay away from that kind of mentality, because
Yeah,
they're here in the like participating in the sport too, to like try to have fun.
yeah, that's true.
Right.
But also with grading, some of the coaches at our gym have had the great idea of because you know how grading is. It kind of demeans you. It kind of, I mean, you see a V8 and you're like, oh, the hills look nice, but it's a V8, so I don't think I could do it. I'm pretty sure we've all been there. But with coaches one day came in, and as they were coaching, they had all the holds covered, or the colors covered, and it's kind of, not gonna lie, it was kind of great to see that, because I was like, oh, maybe I'll go try that one. I tried it. And I looked under it. I was like, "Oh, it's a red," and I just got it in one go. I mean, it was a pretty nice, gnarly red. Kind of makes you feel a little bit better not to know the grade a little bit at the same time. Not gonna deny that.
Yeah. And I'll share my thoughts on this, but first, I want to take a brief moment here to share with you how warm and comfortable I am, and how good I look in this beautiful sweater that I'm wearing from our friends over at 510. And it's a good time to remind you guys that this video is not brought to you by 510, but it absolutely could be. I'm just throwing that out there. I know we've talked about it before, but dude, let's trade emails. Let's talk about it. 510. All right. So moving forward, grading is a necessary evil, and a lot of people don't think it's an evil, but I'll explain myself. I'm totally with Zach with what he just said. I asked a question for the viewers in the last episode, and that was, what do you look at first? And one of those options was the grade. A lot of people, myself included, have a bad habit of looking around the gym and looking just at the tags. Before even looking at the climb, you look at the tag. And whether that be like, what's going to be my project, or like, what's the hardest climb here, whatever your motivation for looking at it is, you have to determine what that motivation is. If you walk in the gym and the first thing you see is the tag, you need to find out why that's the first thing you look at. And then kind of dive into that a little bit. And for me, I find that it's like I've gotten to a point where climbing in the upper percentile of the climbs that are set in the gym, the 2 to 3 hardest climbs from every set, those are going to be what I target. Those are going to be my projects, what I really am going to spend time on, because I've progressed to the point where I can do the other climbs without much difficulty. And that has upsides and downsides. First of all, I have less projects. I'm not happy about it. I wish I had more projects,
Yeah.
but that's the nature of climbing. The better you get, you got to look for harder climbs. With that being said, I wish that I could walk into a room and completely ignore the tags, because I think there are climbs with grades that I have not climbed yet. In other words, have not climbed a V8, a V9, or a V10 indoors yet. I think I surely could have if I just wouldn't be bothered by the grade, because there's a mental gate that closes itself in my brain when I see a climb that I haven't, a climb of a grade, I should say, that I haven't done yet. I'm like, ooh, I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to go hard for this one. I'm going to have to give it all I've got and really, put it all on the line to send this climb. Puts me in a weird mindset. And I experienced it recently when I almost climbed my first black dot, which again at our gym is V8, V9. I got very close. It was the first time since starting climbing again, which was a couple years ago, that a climb of that grade felt tangible to me. It felt like it was right in front of me, and I just had to reach out and grab it. I did all the moves just separately, and none of them felt particularly difficult. Normally, climbs of that grade, to me, there will be 1 or 2 moves that feel impossible, and I really will have to push myself to get through. I really was able to put this climb together without much difficulty. I don't know if it was just exactly my style, or if it was just the holds maybe were exactly right for me, or what, but and I watched myself for the next few minutes physically break down, and it was bizarre. I mean, I don't get nervous under pressure, and I don't usually get physically nervous for any reason, but I'll tell you what, dude, I was shaky. My heart rate was like 200, just because the thought had entered my brain, like, dude, you're about to climb your first black dot. That thought was poison for my body, and it created all kinds of weird chemical reactions or hormonal reactions in my body that I did not want it to. And I was sitting there cognizant of the fact that it was happening, but just baffled. I was like, dude, this is insane. I'm so nervous, and I don't get nervous for rock climbing. And it put myself in a place that I don't want to be in again. I think it's good to be a little bit nervous. I think it'll help you push yourself a little bit, and maybe it'll help you pull a little harder so you don't fall off the wall. But at the same time, dude, I was making too much of it. And it was just because of the grade. If I had no idea what grade it was, I would only feel motivation. You know what I mean? I'm back. I got to do this climb. I can do this because I know I can, so I have to do it. But because I saw the grade and because it was a benchmark for me that I had not yet reached, I got inside my own head, and it really screwed me up. And I believe that to this day. I think I could have done that climb that day had I not had that physical reaction. So I think grading can have a negative effect. However, on the flip side, I get why grading exists. I really do. I think it's a great way to measure your own personal progress. It unfortunately is being used as a way to measure your progress against other people. I don't think that's so healthy, but also it is good because you can see where you rank amongst your local climbers, and you can kind of climb with people that climb your same level, and that's very important as well. So I don't know, man. I really go back and forth on grading. I wish that I didn't pay attention to it, but I think we all do. I don't think there's anyone really who completely ignores grades, at least not in a local climbing sense. Maybe competition climbers or really, really strong climbers don't worry about grades so much. But even those people, if you're putting up V12, V13 outdoors, you got to care at least a little bit. Like, that's got to mean something, because that's the only tangible way people can look at what you're doing and be like, yo, that's really hard, is because it has a grade. Otherwise, how do we know? Right? So it has ups and it has downs.
I mean, like, I've climbed threes that have just like slapped me straight down on my face, and just like I've also cakewalked some sixes, and it's just like it all has to do with your style of climbing. Like, if they throw up a three that like is a completely different style of what you're normally climbing, like say you climb crimps, but then like it's a three sloper and you've never climbed slopers before, like you're just gonna slap the mat every single time.
Oh yeah. Style plays a big part in it.
I disagree with the style thing. It will be totally different, because I mean, you could, like Nick was saying, you could cakewalk a six, and then somebody else with a different style could walk up to it and try it and just be like, man, that's a dumb climb. Like, I just can't even get off the floor with it. It just, at that point, it just becomes different style. Pretty much. Yeah.
I think that's why our gym and many gyms have moved to a dual grading system. In other words, a climb will have two grades. This is somewhere between a V4 and a V5, or a V5 and a V6, or even the Hangar 18 gyms where I grew up climbing, where grading was like very important. For whatever reason, it was always on the dot. It wouldn't be like a V5. This is a V5 plus. Very specific grading in my experience. But even recently, they have transitioned to a system of climbs. Some climbs, not all of them, have two grades. And I think that's very important because, exactly like Nick said, I have gotten on climbs that were, I'll just say it, they were too easy. Too easy for me to work on them. I really shouldn't have struggled. I should just kind of walk up it. And I didn't. I mean, I really battled. And I'm up there sweating, and I'm like, dude, this is some type of bullshit V3 that they're setting out here. Like, what is this? But you got to remember, and I think we forget, a V3, a V4, a V5, those are not easy climbs. I mean, those are still should be challenging and difficult and should require techniques. And I hear a lot, not from you guys, definitely, or from really anyone in our close group of friends, but I hear pretty significant amount of complaining when a hard V3 gets set. And it's like, dude, go step on a V3 at Joshua Tree or Black Mountain. You will remember that V3 is not supposed to be easy. Like, you're supposed to fight it a little bit. And no, gym climbing is not the same, and that's apples and oranges, and I get that. But yeah, I like when easier climbs challenge myself, but it also can be like, it kind of gives you a little tap on the brain. You're like, whoa, where am I? Like, where am I at in climbing? Am I as strong as I thought I was? It just, some things play to your strengths, some things play to your weaknesses, and you have to kind of push past that. Just forget the grade. You know what I mean? Enjoy the climb for what it is. The only time I think you should really pay attention to grading is to map your own progression, and to make sure that you are on a steady uphill climb in terms of progression and you're pushing yourself. Try things that are too hard for you. If you find yourself looking at grades, try looking at climbs, after you've warmed up adequately, of course. Try looking for the hardest climb in the gym. Project it, dude. Project it for hours. You know what I mean? Even if it feels totally impossible and totally intangible, you'll never touch that climb. You'll never feel the top of the wall right there. Just project it. Just get on climbs that are way too hard for you and just do it.
Yeah, just get on stuff you don't even think you're able to do. I mean, even if you don't think, you never know. You could go up to it and be like, man, this is gonna be hard, and you could cakewalk that thing. I mean, you never know. You never know until you try. And I mean, that's the good thing about the sport. I think you really push your limits sometimes, and sometimes you don't push them without even breaking a sweat. And you never know what you could do, what you could mentally do or physically do until you do them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it comes down to single moves. You know what I mean? People be like, dude, that climb's a V9. I could never do that. Can you do one move? Can you do the next move? You really got to break it down move by move. And that's why, I don't know why, but I get discouraged from doing this at gyms all the time. I will hop on a climb. My first go, I will always try to flash it. You know what I mean? Go from the start, try to do every move, try to get to the top. If I don't flash it, the first thing I do is I climb up the climb next to it and I get on the same move that I just fell off of. Because you know why? Unpopular opinion. If I don't flash a climb, I don't give a shit how many tries it takes me. I really don't. I mean,
I agree.
What's the difference between taking 2 tries to do it and taking 5 tries to do it? There's no difference, dude. Flashing is important. I get it. If you can flash a climb, that means something. That means you read it correctly. That's a personal victory. Doing it in 2 tries, though, I mean, how's that different than doing it in 3 tries or 4 tries? So what I do is immediately go back to the move that was hard for me or the move that I fell on and try that and do that over and over again until it does not feel like a problem at all. And if it's the start, if it's the first move that feels really, really hard for me, I do the rest of the climb over and over again until it feels comfortable and second nature. And then guess what? The start feels easy. The next time I go to try and do it, the start feels no problem, dude, because I know that I have the rest of the climb down. So I only have that one obstacle in my way. So what are your thoughts on projecting? Because I've had people in the gym be like, what are you doing, dude? That wasn't from the start. Like, why don't you just go from the start just in case you send it? I'm like, dude, because I don't care. Like, what happens if I don't care if I send it? Because guess what? If I send it without one move, I can probably send it the next go. So I don't care. So what are your guys' thoughts on that? Do you think the number of attempts outside of a competition, of course, do you think the number of attempts is indicative of your strength in climbing or your even your technique?
I don't think so. I don't think it that means like the physical aspect to it. Obviously, you're gonna get up there and keep working it as much as you can. Obviously, you have the physical strength to do it because you did start it. Even if you got halfway through and came off the wall, you did start it. So obviously, you do have the physical capability to do it. But at that point, when projecting, I believe it comes to the mental aspect of it. Like, okay, I got to put my foot here. Got to turn my body this way to reach this hold, or in that pretty much sense. I mean, I got to toe hook this to be able to do this move and reach that little bit much higher to hit that hold. At that point it becomes a mental aspect, which I personally very much enjoy projecting because of that reason. It makes you think about more than just the physical aspect of climbing, which obviously climbing is way much more than physical aspect. So I personally love projecting.
Yeah, like I don't see how you can become a better climber without projecting. Like, if you're sitting there struggling on a climb and just continuously like going from the start of the climb and falling off of the same exact move and not making adjustments or like kind of like tweaking your technique, seeing what could be done differently, like then how are you supposed to become like better as a climber, you know?
Yeah. You guys make good points, and I totally agree with that. And I think it's weird anytime anyone's like, why don't you just try it from the start? And again, I think that just comes into maybe that I'm climbing with a new generation of rock climber who, maybe kind of think that sending is more important than getting stronger. And I get that, dude. I really do. I mean, you want to do a climb. You want to finish the hardest climb in the gym. You want to impress people. Maybe your buddies are there. There is nothing wrong with that. Listen, straight from the horse's mouth. There is nothing wrong with wanting to impress people with rock climbing. It is a crazy impressive sport. It's really fun to watch people pushing themselves in this sport specifically because it's so awesome. And what we're doing frankly, it's either the most unnatural thing or maybe the most natural thing in the world. I can't tell because I wasn't around, at the dawn of time. Maybe we've been doing this since the dawn of time. But for people who don't rock climb, seeing people climb a V9 is like baffling. I mean, it is life shaking. It changes your whole perspective on what is physically possible. And not a lot of sports do that, dude. I mean, you see, and I always use this metaphor. Let's take, I'm not going to give the name because I don't know, but let's say that there's one person who is the greatest football quarterback in the world. You could probably watch that person, throw a perfect spiral every single time, hit their target every single time and be like, that's awesome. He probably practiced that a lot. That's really cool. I respect him for doing that. But you see the best climber in the world and you're like, oh my God, what is he doing to his body? Like, that's inhuman. That's disgusting and also so cool. And I think it's really cool that we have a sport like that really pushes the limits of the human body. And I want to reference, there's a very specific video, and I was talking with my friend about this at the climbing gym the other day. And I know a lot of you have probably seen this video because it's definitely made its rounds in the YouTube game, but it's a video of our buddy, our friend, our Lord and Savior, Adam Ondra. And he is climbing, I forget the name of the climb. I believe it's called Disbelief. I know that sounds funny, but I think that might be the name of the climb. Might have been Disbelief. It's a 9B. I don't remember where it is. He's pretending that there's holds on the wall. I mean, no joke. He's crimping on like literally nothing, like small distortions in the rock's face. And he's like locking off on these, it's the tiniest little pretend holds. And to me, even as I would consider myself, even as an aggressive, maybe not aggressive is the right word, but even as a competitive and, middle range to higher level rock climber, I'm like, yo, that's impossible. Someone's holding him up with a rope or something because you can't do that. But he can. And we have a sport like that really pushes the boundaries of physicality and what's physically possible based on the human body. So I think that's really cool. I think you should climb to impress people because I think it's important, just to be motivated by something. With that being said, don't climb grades to impress people. Don't be like, how can I make my body do this V8 to impress everyone here at the gym? Don't do that. Instead, think to yourself, how can I do this climb? What techniques can I use to do each of these moves individually? And I'll tell you what, do climbs twice and do them differently. If you do a climb and it feels okay, but it doesn't feel 100% perfect, do the same climb and do something different. Change it up. Throw a heel hook somewhere. Pay attention to your feet. Pay attention to your hips. Mark and I talked about this a little bit. Every part of your body has to be accounted for when you're on the wall. Yes. If you feel like you did a climb and it was at all sloppy, do it again. Pay more attention. Don't think about the people that are watching. Think about your body and what your body's doing. And I encourage climbers, good and beginners and strong climbers, everyone, just pay attention to your body while you're rock climbing. Really push yourself in that aspect. Don't just push grades because it's not a healthy way to climb. It is cool to get stronger and see yourself get better, but take a climb that feels good, that flows well, that's too easy. You know what I mean? That you climbed and were like, wow, that didn't push me at all. And change it up. Try and figure out why it was so easy for you. Is your technique perfect? If so, take a mental note of your technique and what you're doing there and apply it to another climb later on down the line. That's all I'll say about pushing grades. It's okay to try to impress people. I really do think that. And I think maybe that's an unpopular opinion. People are like, this guy, only gets on V10s and screams a lot in our gym, and that's obnoxious. I agree. I agree sometimes it's obnoxious, but at the same time, like, dude, if that's what motivates you to climb a V10, fuck, do it. Like, continue doing it and don't stop for me. You're going to get some weird looks from me, but it's my fault for judging, not your fault for doing it. That's your thing. But
it kind of reminds me of that one story you were telling me about with Zach Mans. He what was it, a black dot or a purple dot that he just kind of like cakewalked up?
Yeah,
and then he
just
just
black dot.
Sits down right next to you and he just goes, not about finishing the climb. It's about looking good while you're doing it.
Changed my life. Zach Manzani, if you were listening to this, I miss you, Dad. Come home. But also, changed my life. He probably doesn't even remember.
Yeah.
Maybe he does. Maybe he was saving that for the right person. And the moment felt so right that he chose to bestow his dying wish or his dying thought upon me. And he thought maybe he was going to die tomorrow, and he was like, hey man,
Dude, no,
remember.
Like, ever since you told me that story, though, I've kind of adopted that kind of climbing style. I've tried to like make myself like do the climbs as clean and nice as possible, like whenever I try to climb.
Oh yeah, it's a very healthy way to push yourself rock climbing. Take a climb that you know you can do. If you're doing it sloppy, clean it up. You know what I mean? Try to make it look like you really know what you're doing. I know that sounds weird, but that will improve your technique so much, dude. I literally improved my technique a ton just based on that one lighthearted, humorous piece of advice. It's not about sending. It's about looking good. And my God, he looks good while sending. But like, that's because his technique is very good and he's very strong. But he's not crazy dynamic. You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong. I am crazy dynamic. So trust me, I'm not insulting it. I'm just saying he's very static. His movement is very intentional. That's the biggest thing. I think I really hit on something hard there. Make your movements intentional. Every single movement of your foot, your hips, turning from one direction to the other. Make every single move on the wall intentional and make it purposeful. If you find yourself at any point kicking your legs around, or a piece of you is touching the wall that shouldn't be touching the wall, like Nick said, they're belly flopping all over the wall. If you're dragging yourself up the wall, climb a couple grades down. Take some easier climbs for a little bit and really focus on cleaning it up. Not for everyone else necessarily, but for you. Focus on cleaning up your technique. Watch some climbers. Dude, I can't emphasize it enough. Watch climbing. If you want to get really good at climbing, you want to build your technique, watch climbers climb. There's no better way to do it. Pay attention to what their bodies are doing, because they sure are paying attention, and really just glean that. But dude, truly, I'm super glad you brought that up, because to this day, that is an awesome point that he made to me. And I don't know if he was joking or not, but I like to think that he was extremely serious and he knew the effect that was going to have on the rest of my life. Because now I'm with you, Nick. I pay so much closer attention to how my technique looks like on the wall, because, and you said this earlier, but I don't want to climb. If there was a V10 that I could do, but I had to just scramble my way up the wall, I don't think I would want to do it.
I mean, it benefits you more than anything else, because I mean, like, you can hurt yourself like so much easier by doing like dynamic movements. Yeah. Like,
yeah,
if let's say you dyno to a hold and like you catch it, but your legs swing out, but then like all of a sudden you dry fire, like then all of a sudden you're face down towards the mat. I've seen so many videos of people just like, they do dynamic moves, they just flip around everywhere, and then next thing you know, their arm turns into a rubber band. Like,
yeah,
it's the scariest thing to me. And that's why, like, that is one big thing that I don't want to do when I'm climbing. Like, I don't want to hurt myself, because then that just means I'm going to be further, like, I'm going to have to take a long break, and I'm going to have to just set myself back, and I'm not going to be at the same level that I am right now. So, like, if I hurt myself tomorrow, like, I break my arm or something, then, like, that's, like, 3-4 weeks at least that I'm going to have to take off, and that's, like, every single, like, couple weeks is, like, a grade down, and it's really hard to get back up to that.
Yeah, totally good. Being injured is terrible, and if you are doing things, you have to also think about, I think maybe it was you, Nick, you and your brother that I was talking to about this, but not only pay attention and control your movements for yourself so you don't hurt yourself, but for the people you're with, because you don't want to put your buddies in that situation where you are reckless. You know what I mean? You're throwing yourself up the wall. You're scaring people. People are trying to spot you. They're worried for you and your safety and your health. You are a toxic. If you do that, I'm sorry, but you are a toxic climber.
Yeah.
It's like awful. If you're spotting someone and they hurt themselves, like, that's your friend. That could be your best friend. Like, if they hurt themselves and you could be sitting there thinking, like, what could I have done to have, like, prevented this? Like, you know?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I did put that on Nick one day. I was trying to decently hard climb, but I knew I could get past most of it until the very last move. But I did have Nick spot me, and I did kind of scare him because I did kind of go face first. But I rolled out of it. I told him to trust me, trust you, and kind of work together at it. But I know I did scare the shit out of him that day.
Yeah, no, I'm not very confident with spotting. So when people ask me to do it, I'm just like, I don't know if you want me to do that, man.
Yeah. I just want to make sure the pad was under me, and I'll take it from there. I'll let him trust me with that.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys have listened to the first podcast, but either way, my friend Mark was talking about that with his brother. They really know each other's climbing style. So it's okay for them to push themselves to that degree because they understand each other's decision making. So, when Mark is spotting Tanner, his younger brother, he knows if Tanner's doing something, it's because he's confident that he can. So he's never going to question that, but he's going to maintain an active view of the person climbing, and he's going to be... Tanner's a fantastic dynamic spotter, and as well as a dynamic belayer. He's the best belayer I've ever seen. I don't know why, but he just is. He pays very close attention to your body language on the wall and understands your decision making because he understands climbing. And here's the thing, Nick, you kind of touched on it there. When you're out there climbing with someone and that person gets hurt, let's say you're outdoors, you're far away from a car or a road, and you're with your buddy, and your buddy's being reckless and your buddy gets hurt. Not only do you now have to witness your friend getting hurt, which is traumatizing, really is. That becomes not just your friend, but that becomes your responsibility now. You have to handle this situation, and that's taxing. It really is. It's emotionally and physically taxing because let's say you're outdoors with your friend knocks himself unconscious. That becomes your responsibility to do something with that situation. Now, I'm not saying that's never going to happen, or if that does happen, then you're climbing with the wrong people. All I'm saying is have a mutual understanding with the people you climb with, what to do if that situation occurs, how to handle it, have trust between you and the people you're climbing with, and by any means necessary, do your best to be considerate of other climbers. I mean, everyone's time is valuable, and to be reckless and to be hurting yourself constantly, you're putting a burden on the people that you climb with. And that's unfair, dude, because everyone's trying to enjoy climbing. And have you ever thought about this? Instead of carrying your ass up a mountain, they would probably rather be doing other climbs. I think it's a selfish way to climb, to be extremely reckless. It is very selfish. But some people be like that. I mean, I don't know. I can't understand it because I'm not like that. But I would just encourage you guys to try not to be like that.
I mean, like, I know for a fact, like, even... like when Brooke just sprained her ankle on that one red over in Vital, like you were filming her, but like you were like, what if I was spotting her? Like it wasn't a big like injury, but you still like took it out on yourself. Like you're like, there was something I could have done. Like that's, and there was really nothing you could have done about it. It was just a bad fall.
Yeah. And thank you for bringing that up. That's a good example. Brooke was not being reckless. But I put a camera on her, and thus she felt pressured to perform. You know what I mean? She felt like she could do it because I was telling her she could do it. And while that's, again, I'm trying to communicate clearly that that's not a bad thing. Brooke is not a reckless person. She's a very cautious climber, especially now. But she knows her limits, and she tends to not push her limits, and that's okay. It really is. You can get better without pushing yourself wildly outside of your own limits. But in one moment, she decided to, really push herself. And while it was her decision, and I trust her decision, I trust her thinking, that's why I wasn't worried. I know her decision making, I know her climbing style. I know and trust her on the wall to not get hurt. Does that mean I don't spot her normally, or even more now? Absolutely not. I'm very attentive now to her climbing on the wall because it was traumatizing for me. It really was. And I'll tell you what, the next few days of my life were equally traumatizing. Taking her to the emergency room in the middle of the night and, taking care of her and just being worried about her hurting herself and thinking about maybe I could have done something differently. Maybe I could have put a pad underneath her. Maybe it would have helped. Maybe it wouldn't have. And ultimately, I don't lose sleep about it anymore. But it's true. And that's a good flip side of that situation where it actually has nothing to do with her because she, for the most part, she was in control until she wasn't. She just slipped off the top of the wall and she took a nasty fall, and it was a 1 in 1,000 chance that she was going to land the way that she landed, but she did, and she hurt herself. Sometimes it happens, but based on the trauma that put on me in my life, I encourage you, don't do that on purpose. Don't always be flying around hard to spot, hard to catch, hurting yourself, because it puts a burden on you and other rock climbers. And I mean, that's really all I can say about it. Is it's selfish, and it's self-centered. It puts the focus on you for way longer than the focus is supposed to be on you for. But that's that's all I will really say about that. I think we can move on from that topic now. Just be mindful of the other climbers around you. I'll take another brief break here just to say that I have changed sweatshirts while talking, and I am incredibly comfortable, and also I look great in this Vertical Thoughts sweatshirt that I'm wearing. You can check it out along with some other awesome and stylish and comfortable apparel at shop.spreadshirt.com/vertical thoughts. If you have not checked it out, I would encourage you to. There's some cool stuff on there. We just launched it recently. And yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and unplug now. So before we wrap up, I feel like we're coming to
You should have repeated the website real quick.
That's shop.spreadshirt.com/vertical thoughts. And
we can change that around in editing.
Yeah, but no. And before we wrap things up here, I want to talk about and get your guys' opinions so far on, and by you guys, I mean both you two, Nick and Zach, and also the viewers, the listeners, your opinions on how this is going so far. If you have any constructive criticism, if you like the brand and how it's going, and what, you know, the future of Vertical Thoughts is. And basically, I'm going to try to keep my words short, but I started Vertical Thoughts to create kind of a centralized platform for rock climbing media. I love talking about climbing. I love talking about the intricacies of the sport. I love talking with climbers, and my intention is to have many, dozens, maybe even hundreds of different rock climbers on the show to get different perspectives on the sport and different things. And that's the thing, is everyone brings a new, fresh perspective into the mix. Everyone thinks differently. Everyone climbs differently. And I really want to bring that all into one place for you guys to listen. So, Nick, Zach, how do you feel so far about Vertical Thoughts? What are your vertical thoughts?
Nick, want to go ahead and start us off?
No. Well, like, I mean, I really like the brand. The name's good. I like my sweatshirt. Like, I can't really say anything yet because, like, I haven't listened to, like, the other podcast.
Fair enough.
First episode.
It's only been a few days that it's been out,
yeah, like,
and I know you
I haven't had time yet. Bad friend.
I fortunately was able to get, like, a sneak peek into the first podcast, and honestly, I think it's pretty good. I really do. I think, not trying to be, like, biased or anything, any of the listeners. I think it's good. I really do. I think you did a good job. Pretty good questions. Questions that make you a little bit think about yourself, like, do I do this or do I do that? It just flows really well also. And also the clothing, I haven't yet to get myself anything, but the logo is sick, and I've heard it's very comfy. So
yeah, and I appreciate your feedback, guys. I appreciate that. And those who are listening, those who are watching, tweet me, comment below, whatever you want to do. Get in touch with me. Let me know what you think about the branding, the logo, the apparel, the website, the podcast, Mark's beautiful face and or figure, Nick and Zach's just strapling young lads, truly. We know you think that. You don't have to comment that below. Tweet them, in fact. Tweet them. Find them on Instagram. I'll have their Instagrams linked below. I want to thank both of you guys for joining me today. But before we go, we know what time it is. It be this time sometimes, boys. And it is time to answer the question of the day. Give me a name. There's more to the question. That's not it.
I was like, hold on.
Who has inspired your climbing the most? You can't give me a list of people. You have to pick one name, I know, because for me, it will take me the next several days for me to narrow it down to one person. But drop a name, even if it's someone that is not a famous climber, someone only you know personally. If you're listening to this, watching this, tell me one person who has very deeply inspired your rock climbing. And Nick and Zach, I'm going to give you guys a chance to answer the question here. It doesn't have to be the person who has inspired it the most. Maybe
I've chosen.
Oh, dude, we're rolling. Let's go.
Liam win.
It's your boy.
That's right, baby. It's you.
Let's go, dude. itsyourboy.com/LiamWin/Foxel.
Follow me on Twitch.
And we're gonna cut that out. No, I'm leaving that. I'm leaving that in, dude.
Wow.
That's staying in.
Your boy doesn't even get a shout out.
Dude. Okay, but here's the dude. Is that your final answer? And if so, explain yourself.
Well, yeah, because I mean, like, we push each other to be like better, you know. And I think that's always important. Have like one single, or not necessarily one single person to climb with, but like have a set group of people that like to climb with, and like you can give each other feedback. Like have someone who can watch you and tell you like maybe you should try this, maybe you should try this. You know, like, and I feel like I climb the most with you. So,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. We have different climbing styles, different body types, different strengths and weaknesses. And so I think that helps us push each other in rock climbing. Zach, an influential climber, and why?
I was about to say, honestly, I was about to say Tommy Caldwell. But then again, I also like what Nick said. I mean, I agree with him completely. At the same time, so now I'm overthinking my answer. I'm thinking about it.
No,
a little
dude,
bit.
I like the initial. There's a lot to be gleaned from a climber who, with as much experience and as much knowledge as Tommy Caldwell. So dive into that a little bit. What about him has?
I think
you?
it's just from like him just starting from literally when he was about like 6 years. Well, since he was like a little kid, his dad was into rock climbing, so he pretty much just mimicked his dad, and he started getting into rock climbing. He climbed the Devil's Tower. I'm pretty sure you guys know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
When he was 6 years old. That's insane. That's about like 12,000 something or 1,200 something feet, and I've barely gone past about 80. And then he's climbed over in Yosemite on the Spire when he was about I think about 12 or something like that. But it's still, he has so much experience. He's been climbing literally his entire life, and then he's done some hardships. He's been through a divorce. He's lost a finger, which obviously your hands are very vital to you in climbing.
Oh yeah.
But he's been through a lot. He's lost some friends along the way, and he's just been through a lot of stuff. But he's still pushing through it, and he's still climbing, and he's still looking for the next thing to push the limit of climbing and to push the limit of himself.
You know what? I totally appreciate and understand what you're saying. Tommy Caldwell, one of the greats. I mean, he'll go down in history as one of the greats. He still is so great, and that's the main thing about Tommy Caldwell that impresses me, is that he's still going, dude. Like I mean, you've been hearing about him for so long, and he's still cooking. He's still making headlines. He's still pushing the limits, and that's such an impressive thing for someone to maintain that kind of, I mean, climbing repertoire for like so long, dude. He really just continues to push it, and that's a great answer, Zach. And I know you're a big Caldwell fan, as am I. I think that he is absolutely a very inspiring climber. Tommy, dude, just reach out to me whenever you're ready to be on the podcast, dude. I'll get it set up for you. I'm ready on my end. Tommy and or Tommy's manager, dude, we'll trade emails. You want not vital, sorry. I'm plugging my own climbing gym. You want a Vertical Thoughts sweater? Dude, you want some merch, some apparel? It's not a bribe. I just please be on the show. Please, I love you. We love you. Bring Alex on with you. But with that, thank you guys for your thoughts, for your insights, for sharing with me how you feel about rock climbing. Do you guys have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Think vertically.
I like that. I like that.
Horizontally, vertically, yeah.
I mean, unless you traverse.
Oh, good point.
No, if you traverse, then do it vertically.
Oh shit.
Climbing tips with Liam. But with that being said, we've said a lot. We're ready to wrap things up for today. Again, my name is Liam Wynn. I'm the host and founder of Vertical Thoughts. With me is Nick Henson and also Zach Medina. And boys, thank you so much for joining me. Viewers, audience, fans around the world, pro climbers, whoever you may be listening, we love you. Thank you for watching this. And hopefully we'll see you. My cat is biting my arm. So, sorry, hold on. Thank you for listening, and we will see you on the next podcast. Boys, let's go climb, dude.
Let's go.
You want to play video games?
What? You interrupted my let's go. I was going to give you a loud one.
My
Let's
bad.
go. Let's go.